I stood just outside the door, the one that used to open for me with laughter and the smell of my grandson's morning cereal, listening instead to the muffled sounds of his mother's voice on the other side. I pressed my hand to the wood, remembering the tiny hand that had once slipped into mine as we crossed the street to the park. How his eyes would search for me first at every school play, every scraped knee, every bedtime story. Now, after 15 years of building a family from the ashes my daughter left behind, I was told, quietly but firmly, that I wasn't needed anymore, that my place had expired like an old carton in the fridge, set out by the curb for the next trash pickup. The woman who once called me mother had returned, radiant with success and forgiveness for herself, and in the span of a single summer, she managed to rewrite 15 years of love, one whispered secret at a time. She braided stories of my supposed control and meddling into my grandson's ear, urged him to call it freedom, until the boy who once called me mom tucked his phone away whenever I spoke and began closing his bedroom door. When I pleaded quietly, "Timothy, what did I do wrong?" he just shrugged, brushing past me for her embrace. How did it come to this? How could the child I cradled through sleepless nights step away so easily, letting the woman who'd left him behind change his heart and erase me as if I'd never mattered at all? If this story touches your heart, please subscribe and stay with me to hear how this ends. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. You might see your own family in this story. My name is Marjorie Evans, and I am 74 years old. Never in my wildest, most fevered dreams did I imagine this. Telling my story, not on a church pew or over a cup of tea, but to strangers who might understand when even my own flesh and blood no longer do. For so many years, I believed in the quiet power of endurance, in the dignity of doing what's right, even when no one thanks you for it. I suppose that's the librarian in me, the one who believed every life, every chapter, has meaning if only someone cares enough to turn the page. I used to be known around town as Miss Marjorie, the lady who remembered every child's birthday at the library, who could recommend the perfect book to a grieving father or a shy little girl too afraid to speak up. My late husband, Richard, used to joke that I had a heart big enough to shelve 1,000 stories. I always thought he was just flattering me. But looking back, I suppose that's why I was called to step in when my own daughter, Melissa, couldn't finish the story she'd started with her son. Richard's passing left me alone, but not lonely. Our little blue house on the corner was still alive with memory, laughter echoing in the walls, my son Jonathan's postcards from the cities he wandered to, my daughter's voice on tape from old birthday parties. When Melissa showed up teary-eyed and overwhelmed all those years ago, barely 23 and clutching her baby, she sobbed that she wasn't ready. She needed time to find herself, to become someone Timothy could be proud of. I remember cradling Timothy where I'd nursed my own children. He was a fretful baby at first, missing the scent of his mother, but soon enough he wrapped his little fingers around my heart and attached himself with a grip I never dreamed would one day be pried away. Every morning was a small adventure, sticky oatmeal kisses, first steps on creaking floorboards, tiny socks gone missing in the laundry. I snapped photos for Melissa, emailed updates, first words, first stumbles, hoping each time for more than a 2-line reply. When weeks became months, and months grew to years, Melissa's postcards faded to silence. Timothy learned to toddle, to run, to bike along our block. My neighbor Margaret Chen became Aunt Margaret, always ready with a homemade dumpling or a stern lecture when I worried too much. The years rolled gently over us. School, birthday parties, scraped knees patched with old family remedies. I watched Timothy's cheeks round with childhood, his voice deepen toward adolescence. Somewhere along the way, he stopped calling me Grandma and started calling me Mom, not because I asked him to, simply because in every way that counted, I was. Raising a child at nearly 60 wasn't easy. There were late-night homework crises, doctor's visits, and for a short, wild phase, sullen teenage outbursts about rules and curfews. Through it all, I held steady. I wasn't perfect. I could be stern and worry too much, I suppose, but I loved fiercely. I gave up early retirement dreams and turned down several invitations to join my friends' book club trips. I clipped coupons, traded in Richard's old sedan for something more reliable, and celebrated each little victory, a B on a tough math test, a role in the school play, as if it were newsworthy. Timothy was never a burden. His laughter gave me purpose when my bones ached, and every hug reminded me why I fought so hard to give him a childhood untouched by the trauma of his mother's absence. The house became a timeline of growing pains. Crayoned walls in the hallway, height marks by the pantry door, the echo of his voice at the top of the stairs when he called for me during thunderstorms. He grew tall, with Margaret always saying, "That boy's going to be a heartbreaker," and I'd smile thinking how lucky I was that he'd never know the sharp edges of abandonment. At least, not as long as I could protect him. I sent Melissa emails, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly. I wrote long letters at Christmas, tucking in photos and stories. Her replies were sporadic, busy missives from cities I'd never visited, San Diego, Houston, now New York, and filled with ambition, apologies, and vague promises. "Don't worry, Mom, I'm finding myself. One day I'll come back for him. I just can't be a mother right now." I believed her at first. What mother would lie about someday coming home? Timothy asked about her less and less. When he did, I told the truth, that his mother loved him but was working far away so she could be her best for him someday. I believed in hope, like some folks believe in rain during a drought, desperate, a little foolish, but all I had. As he grew, Timothy found stability in our routines. We built traditions for just us, pool nights at Margaret's, pancakes every Sunday, fishing trips to the lake on his birthday. I watched him become thoughtful and funny, a boy who read under the covers past bedtime, who always helped clear Miss Margaret's driveway after a storm. I didn't have much, but I gave everything I could, a warm home, gentle discipline, unconditional love. Never once did I imagine I'd be punished for it. Our bond was unbreakable, so I thought. I believed love, once proven, was stronger than any absence. Looking back now, I see how vulnerable I was, how much I took for granted. But isn't that what happens to so many of us? We love and we risk our hearts, never imagining that those we protect most fiercely are the ones fate will use to test us. It was the summer Timothy turned 16 when my world began to shift. Melissa's first email came after years of silence. No preamble, no explanations, just, "Timothy will be a young man soon. I want to see him. I'm coming home." The words were like a crack in an old window, letting in a chill I thought I'd sealed out for good. I told myself it was a good thing, that every boy deserved to know his mother. But deep down, I felt the tremor, the beginning of something I couldn't stop. If I could go back, I'd hug that younger version of me tighter, remind her to brace for the storm, to trust her instincts, to never underestimate the power of longing in a mother who's been gone too long. Raising Timothy made me who I am. But the world has a cruel way of rewriting our stories, even when we've penned every page in love. He was my world, my whole heart, and I never saw the eraser in his mother's hand until my story was halfway finished. That summer, with the gentle hum of cicadas and the sun burning the edges of the curtains, everything began to change. Melissa called first, a voice I barely recognized, polished and tight as piano wire. She didn't start with an apology. She started with a plan. "Mom, I'm coming back next Friday. I'd like to stay at the house for a while, if that's all right. Timothy needs to see me. He deserves to know his real mother, my real mother." The words scraped at an old wound, but I bit my tongue and replied, "Of course, Melissa. He's always wanted to meet you again." There was a pause. I could hear the city behind her, sirens and voices, but all she said was, "I hope you understand. This is what's best for him." When I told Timothy his mother was coming, his eyes went wide, then distant. He had so many questions. What did she look like now? Did she remember his favorite cereal? I tried to answer without betraying my own uncertainty, guiding him gently, desperate to keep our routines intact. Melissa arrived with expensive luggage and a bright, chilly smile. She was all city Polish now, her hair in a sharp bob, not a strand out of place, her nails painted a color I'll never forget, deep, almost angry red. Timothy hovered awkwardly at her side the first afternoon, nervous, looking back at me whenever she asked him questions about school, sports, his friends. At dinner, Melissa recounted stories from boardrooms, not playgrounds, and praised Timothy for his potential, a word that left a bitter taste in my mouth. For 2 weeks, she played the part of attentive mother, arriving at his football games, arranging outings to local cafes he'd never visited. She filled his phone with photos and asked about his dreams, all the while weaving herself back into his world with the precision of someone accustomed to winning. Timothy seemed dazed, caught between 2 puzzles, one familiar, one shiny and new. I watched him try to piece them together, giving him space but feeling like every shared glance, every private joke between us, was being catalogued and replaced. Margaret warned me, gently, "Don't let her make you the villain in your own home, Marjorie. She wants to be the hero now." I told her, "I'm not afraid of the truth, Margaret. He knows who raised him." But at night alone, I found myself staring at the old family photos, one set in faded frames, another building daily on Melissa's social media, a highlight reel of reclaimed motherhood. One afternoon, Timothy asked quietly, "Grandma, did you and Mom fight a lot when I was little?" The question hit me like cold water. I told him, "No, sweetheart, your mother just needed time. She left you with me because she thought it was best." He nodded, but I saw the doubt take root. Melissa increased her efforts. She attended every parent-teacher meeting, bringing gifts for the staff. She volunteered at the school fair, signing up before I even had a chance. Within a month, people at church began asking, "Isn't it wonderful, Marjorie, having your daughter back? You must feel so relieved she's ready to take over." The word stung, take over, as if Timothy was a project, not a person. At home, I began to feel like a tenant in my own life. Melissa started rearranging rooms, painting over Timothy's height marks, boxing up my books with brisk efficiency. "It's just time for an update, Mom. You've kept everything the same for too long. Let's make this house feel new." Timothy laughed along, eager to impress her. I tried to hide the bruises blooming inside, old memories packed away, the objects of my quiet devotion turned into clutter. The soft hum of our evenings, reading, puzzles, quiet dinners, was replaced with storyboards and schedules. Melissa's voice echoing down hallways I once tiptoed through on little feet. I sought comfort in Margaret's kitchen, in the sturdy shape of a teapot and the steady warmth of friendship. Margaret frowned as I talked. "She's rewriting history, Marjorie. Don't let her erase your part." But how could I compete with the siren song of a mother finally returned, dazzling her way into the heart I'd held for so long? I started finding little things out of place. Timothy's phone, once handed readily to me when he needed help, now lived pressed to his chest. I caught snippets of conversations, Melissa whispering about finally getting his freedom, about all the rules he'd been forced to follow. "She never let you be a teenager. Tim," I overheard her say one night as I cleaned up empty takeout boxes. "With me you can have a real life. You're old enough to choose for yourself." Half-truths, twisted just enough to sting. The next morning, Timothy asked if he could spend the weekend with his mother. Just them, no one else. "Don't worry, Grandma. We'll be back before church on Sunday." That Sunday, they never returned in time for service. By Monday, a new routine had begun. Breakfast with Melissa, afternoons at her rented condo, dinners out instead of quiet meals with me. Timothy's laughter still filled the air, but now it was shared with someone standing just out of reach. I watched from the doorway as Melissa snapped selfies. The two of them framed in a glow I no longer recognized. If this story breaks your heart like it does mine, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments if you've ever felt betrayed by family. A new voice had entered my life, carving a wedge where love once lived. I should have spoken up sooner, challenged Melissa's narrative before it settled into Timothy's bones, but I was tired, and after so many years of silent sacrifice, I didn't know how to compete with possibility, with her sudden offer of the life he never knew he'd missed. First came the fights, about curfews, about friends Melissa encouraged him to see, about grades slipping as new freedoms took priority. Timothy, once reliable and cautious, started skipping chores and rolling his eyes at my gentle reminders. Melissa told him, laughing, "You don't need to worry about rules here. Grandma's stuck in the past. With me, you'll get to travel, meet new people, join clubs. This is your time now. Every night, I waited for him to come home, watching the clock with trembling hands. Sometimes he'd barely say goodnight, collapsing into bed with his shoes still on, phone lighting up his face long after midnight. Other times he wouldn't come home at all, texting late to say, "Staying with Mom, we're looking at colleges tomorrow." Next, I noticed Melissa deleting old photos from the living room shelves, replacing them with recent smiles, her arms around Timothy at the lake. The two of them on a hike, faces pressed close in digitally perfect harmony. The only signs of my 15 years were watermarks on the carpet and dusty marks where his trophies used to be. I tried to slip a photo of us back onto the mantel, only to find it quietly moved to my nightstand the next day. Then came the paperwork. Melissa showed up with a stack of documents, signatures flagged on bright pink stickers. "It's just to get things updated for school and medical records, Mom. I need legal guardianship listed as me. It's easier if you sign now. You'll still be listed as emergency contact, of course." Her words were honey, but her eyes dared me to refuse. I signed, feeling each loop of my pen scratching away the life I'd built. Timothy didn't even look up from his phone. The final straw was Timothy's 16th birthday. Melissa insisted on hosting at her condo, inviting new friends, her colleagues, even posting on social media about her brave comeback as a mother. I arrived with a scrapbook, each page lined with memories, baby teeth, the hospital bracelet from the night she left, a pressed flower from his first school dance. Timothy barely glanced at it, sliding it under a pile of unopened cards as Melissa swept him into the center of her celebration. "Timothy, don't forget all your mother's sacrifice to be here now," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. In that moment, I realized, in her new story, I was a footnote, a useful prop, then a problem to erase. I tried one last time, pleading with Timothy when we returned home. "Sweetheart, can we talk? I just want to understand. Did I do something wrong?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "You're making things weird, Grandma. Mom says you worry too much. I need my own space." I nodded, holding back tears. The boy who once called me Mom had slipped away under a tide of someone else's words. It was then I saw what Margaret had warned me about. Melissa wasn't just returning for Timothy. She was reclaiming her power, rewriting the past to make room only for herself. And in doing so, she erased the very love that had saved them both. I spent that night alone in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea. Margaret joined me, silent at first, then firm. "You have to fight for him, Marjorie. Don't let her story be the only one he remembers. You are his home, even if he's forgotten for now." Looking back now, I realized the true battle had only begun. I tried to sleep that night, but every sound in the house reminded me of the life I'd built with Timothy. The way the stairs creaked when he'd sneak down for a midnight snack. The soft scratch of a page turning in his room when he thought I couldn't hear. My mind replayed his words. "I need my own space," over and over until the ache settled in my chest like a stone. The days grew colder, and so did my world. Melissa's presence became a steady hum, her voice filling every conversation at school and church, her stories always about her sacrifices, her struggles, her triumphant return. When people praised her for making things right, I forced myself to smile, even as their words dug into old wounds. It was as if the past 15 years had become invisible, just background noise to her grand narrative. Invitations to family events started arriving with her name on the envelope, and mine added as an afterthought. I told myself not to take it personally, but that's a lie we tell ourselves to survive. Timothy's teachers stopped calling me, and the phone that had once buzzed with his friends' questions, or his own emergencies, now sat silent on the kitchen counter. Margaret noticed too. "Don't let her freeze you out," she whispered at choir practice. "She's making a production of motherhood, but you're the one who stayed. Remember that." I wish my heart had listened. One afternoon, I went to pick up Timothy from school as I always had, but he was already gone. Melissa had taken him for a surprise lunch without telling me. I stood in the parking lot, clutching my purse, feeling like an intruder at the edges of my own life. When I got home, she was waiting in the living room, her arms crossed. Mom, it's confusing for him if you keep interfering. Let me handle it from now on. Her words were smooth, but her eyes were cold, an ice I hadn't seen since she was a teenager herself. That week, Timothy left for a weekend trip with Melissa and her husband, Eric. They sent photos from an amusement park, smiling, arms draped over each other. Melissa's captions bubbling with gratitude for getting a second chance to be a real family. There were no pictures of me. Of course, not even one of Timothy's old keepsakes. My chest tightened as I scrolled through her posts. My years with Timothy had vanished from the timeline. Incidents came in waves, each one sharper than the last. Melissa forgot to invite me to parent-teacher conferences, saying afterward, "Oh, it was just a quick meeting. Nothing important." She changed the emergency contact forms at school, replacing my name with her own. Packages that once came addressed to Timothy Evans, C.O. Grandma, now had his mother's name front and center. Even the dog, allergic to Melissa's designer perfumes, started to shy away when she swept into the house. The worst was when Timothy caught a cold. I made soup and tried to check his temperature, but Melissa blocked the door. "He needs space. Give him a little privacy, Mom." I waited outside his room, listening for a cough, a sneeze, a call that never came. When I finally peeked in, Timothy was scrolling on his phone. He barely glanced up. "I'm fine, Grandma," he said, lips tight. Sometimes, in the evening, I would walk past his open bedroom door and see him laughing at something on his screen, Melissa sitting beside him making plans. The music changed, the jokes changed. Suddenly, inside jokes we'd had for years became cringe or old news. The hallway that once echoed with his footsteps now felt like a corridor of memories, fading into shadows. Margaret offered to help, but I didn't know how to take it. "Sue for custody," she urged. "Get an advocate." But what would I say? That my daughter was too attentive, too present? I was so used to being the invisible one, sacrificing, standing back. I didn't know how to fight for myself. One evening, Melissa held a dinner, a celebration she called Family Reunification. New family photos hung on the wall, all bright colors and new beginnings. Timothy's friends came, and so did some distant relatives who'd barely visited in years. I was introduced as Grandma Marjorie, who was such a help while Melissa was away. I smiled, cheeks burning, heart breaking. When dinner was over, I stood up to offer thanks for 15 years of memories, but Melissa gently patted my hand, saying, "Let's leave the speeches for later. Tonight is about new beginnings." I excused myself to the kitchen, but tears found me there. I thought of the stories I used to read to Timothy, the ones about orphans and lost boys, and realized I'd become the ghost, the loving guardian written out of the ending to make room for someone else. The days blurred together. Timothy started using my mom in conversation when referring to Melissa, catching himself only sometimes to flash me an apologetic glance. The apology stung more than the oversight. One day he came home with a new haircut, a style Melissa liked, not the shaggy mess he and I used to tease about. I complimented him, and he just shrugged. The final blow came one Friday night when I found a letter on my pillow. "Grandma, please don't be upset, but Mom says I need to start living with her full time. I'll come by to visit on weekends. I hope you understand. I love you." The words blurred as I stared at the page, my hands trembling. I called Margaret, my voice barely above a whisper. She came over with warm bread and tighter hugs than I deserved. "He's a teenager, Marjorie. He's confused. She's giving him freedom, excitement. One day he'll remember who was there. But what if he never did?" The next day, the house was too quiet. I wandered from room to room, opening drawers filled with Timothy's childhood. A forgotten action figure, a sock missing its mate, a paper crown from some birthday long ago. I pressed his old sweatshirt to my nose and cried, my body aching for the weight of a child grown too big to carry. Weeks passed. Timothy visited, but rarely alone. Melissa always accompanied him, watching, correcting, smoothing over any awkwardness if I tried to reminisce. The visits shortened, then stopped altogether. Melissa forwarded me a legal notice, a change in custodial guardianship. The formality of it stung, but nothing compared to the realization that the world now saw Timothy as hers in every way that mattered. I packed a box of memories for him, praying he'd open it someday and remember, really remember, that I was once the center of his world. Margaret suggested I see a lawyer, so I met with Linda Barnes, an elder law advocate. She listened patiently, reviewing the paperwork and shaking her head. "They're not breaking the law, Marjorie. But you have rights as a grandparent. If you want to see him, we can fight." Her words gave me hope, a fragile thread, but hope nonetheless. But hope is a brittle thing when hearts are hardened by distance and revisionist history. Melissa blocked my number. Timothy stopped answering my calls. Friends who'd once stopped by to talk books and borrow recipes now avoided my doorstep, unsure how to help. Still, I persisted. Every Sunday I sent Timothy a text. "Thinking of you. Pancakes if you want them. Love, Grandma." Most went unanswered, but on cold, lonely mornings, it helped to believe the words might someday reach him. I watched his life through social media. Photos of college visits, posts about new friends, Melissa always at the center, applauded for never giving up on her boy. With each passing month, the distance grew. Melissa's version of events, her comeback, her redemption, became reality to everyone around us. It took time, but quiet resolve grew inside me, a voice whispering that I was not an extra in my own story. I began to collect my memories, to rebuild my life, slow step by slow step. I started telling my story at local community groups, then to a support group of grandparents facing the same heartache. Their stories mirrored mine, years given, bonds broken. Families split and reassembled without regard for the ones who kept the light burning. One day, out of habit, I left a note on the porch. "I'll be in the garden if you want to talk." I didn't expect anything, but as I pruned the roses, Timothy appeared. Shoulders hunched and eyes uncertain. We stood in silence. Then he spoke, voice small. "Why did Mom say you kept me from her?" I set down my shears, heart pounding. "Timothy, I never kept you from anyone. I just loved you the best I could." Sometimes grown-ups tell themselves stories to make hard moments feel better. He looked at me, tears threatening. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I don't know what to believe anymore." That moment, our pain, our confusion, our longing, hung in the air, but it was real. No more performances, no more erasing. Just a boy and his grandmother, both aching for the love that had always been there. If you're still listening, still watching, I want you to know, family isn't just blood or who claims you now. It's who stands with you when storms hit, who stays up through the night and comes back again and again, no matter how hard the world tries to rewrite your story. I wish I could tell you that everything changed that day in the garden, that Timothy's eyes cleared and he saw, finally, how much he meant to me and how hard I'd fought for him. But heartbreak is rarely that simple. Pain has a way of lingering like a fog you learn to walk through. His confusion stayed with us as summer faded to autumn, and I realized that winning back a child's trust wasn't something that could be done with a single conversation or a box of old photographs. Melissa pushed harder than ever for her narrative to prevail. She organized a public celebration at church one Sunday, a mother's redemption, inviting friends, relatives, teachers, and even some of Timothy's old classmates. I sat in the fourth pew, hands folded, as Melissa took the stage with Timothy by her side, her speech crafted with practiced emotion. "So many years I lost," she said, voice trembling. "But through sacrifice and healing, I'm grateful to have my son back." People clapped, some wept. Timothy stood beside her, face blank and distant. Forced smiles for the cameras as Melissa made sure her triumph and transformation were undeniable. After the service, a few church members hugged me, whispering that they knew what I'd done for Timothy, that God sees sacrifice even when others don't. I nodded, holding back tears. But for every kind word, there were 10 more people gathering around Melissa, congratulating her for fixing her family and giving Timothy the future he deserves. Even Eric, the stepfather, hovered quietly in the background, looking uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge Melissa's stage. Margaret came to my side, squeezing my hand as we stood watching the scene unfold. "You may not have the microphone, Marjorie, but you have the truth. One day he'll want it. Stay strong. That afternoon, I went home and wrote Timothy a letter. I told him my story, the nights I waited for his fever to break, the birthday cakes he helped me bake, the songs we sang when the world felt heavy on both our shoulders. I didn't blame his mother, just shared the pages of love we'd filled together. I placed it in a plain envelope and left it on his favorite desk in my old study. Weeks passed. Timothy didn't mention the letter, but I saw him reading it, twice at least, late at night, his lamp burning long after midnight. He wasn't the same child, but sometimes when he thought no one was looking, his face softened with something like longing. Then, the unexpected, a knock on my door one Tuesday morning. Attorney Linda Barnes arrived in a crisp navy suit, carrying a folder. "Melissa has filed for formal exclusion of your visitation rights," she said quietly. "She claims your presence is detrimental to Timothy's adjustment. But you have legal standing, 15 years of care, documentation, community support. Are you ready to fight for your place?" My hands shook. The thought of going to court against my own daughter was almost too much to bear. But I'd given up too much already, and some truths refused to be buried. With Linda's help, we gathered everything: photos, cards, school records, statements from teachers and neighbors, even notes from my pastor. Margaret testified, unwavering, describing the years Melissa was absent and the love I'd poured into Timothy's life. The courtroom was cold. Melissa seated in crisp designer clothes, jaw set in defiance. Timothy entered, eyes downcast, flanked by Eric. As Linda spoke, I looked at my grandson, searching for the boy I raised, hoping he felt my silent plea. Linda's words painted a picture of devotion, of nights spent on the floor beside Timothy's crib, of sacrifices made with no expectation of reward. She spoke of family not as title or blood, but as daily love. Melissa's lawyer tried to focus on her reformed life, her rights as a mother, her plans for Timothy's well-being. He recounted my firm rules, accused me of overshadowing Timothy's growth. But the judge listened. At the end of the hearing, he turned to Timothy. "Do you want your grandmother in your life?" Timothy hesitated, glancing in fear at Melissa, then at me. I don't know," he stammered. "It's all so confusing. I thought family was supposed to stay." The judge asked Melissa why she was so intent on erasing my role. Her jaw tightened. "I want a fresh start, for both of us." The judge set a ruling: regular visitation, mandatory family counseling, and a statement of recognition for my 15 years. It wasn't everything. Melissa still controlled most of Timothy's daily life. But my place wasn't erased. That night, Timothy sat with me on the porch, the air cool, his hands tucked tight into his sleeves. He whispered, "Grandma, I wish things were easier. I miss how things used to be." I brushed his hair back like I did when he was little. "Love doesn't disappear, Timothy. People may rewrite stories, but pages filled with love don't vanish." Melissa was furious, but I saw cracks beneath her anger, moments of guilt, regret, uncertainty. Eric stayed silent, but sometimes I caught him glancing my way with something like apology. Through counseling, Timothy found his voice. He confronted Melissa about her absence, asked hard questions. Melissa cried, real tears, not for show. For the first time, she admitted her failings, things she'd hidden, truths she'd manipulated. Timothy listened, then came to me, arms trembling. "She said she's sorry." I'm not sure what to believe. I hugged him, heart aching with hope and sadness. "Believe in the love we shared. And let forgiveness come when you're ready." Justice, in real life, is rarely poetic. There was no triumphant parade or dramatic reconciliation. Instead, there was quiet truth, acknowledgement of my years, my place, my dignity restored, even if the hearts involved were still bruised. Melissa learned, in the harsh light of consequences, that redemption can't be built on erasing someone else's pain. Timothy learned that love is bigger than any story people tell, that a grandmother's devotion can withstand even the hardest winter. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again, not erased, not rewritten, just present, ready for whatever pages come next. Today, as I sit in my little blue house, mornings are quiet but peaceful. Timothy visits regularly, some days for breakfast, some days just to talk. We're different now, both older, both changed by what we've lost and reclaimed. I garden more, read old favorites, meet with other grandparents who've walked this road and survived. Melissa stays in touch, a cautious, respectful distance. She's trying, I think. Sometimes she brings Timothy over for dinner, sharing updates from work and laughing at little things. We're not the family I imagined, but we are a family, stitched together from pain and resilience. Eric helps occasionally, dropping by with groceries, helping fix a leaky pipe. Margaret's still my rock, her kitchen the place I go when the world is heavy. Looking back, I see now that my worth was never defined by another's approval, or even by the bonds they tried to sever. I was Timothy's home, and in some quiet way, I always will be. For all of you who listen to stories like mine, waiting for your own wrongs to be righted, family can wound, but it also heals. Betrayal isn't the end. It's the place from which new chapters begin. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more stories of strength and redemption. Have you ever experienced family betrayal or seen an elder mistreated? Share your thoughts in the comments. Looking back now, I understand that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we loved most deeply. But I also learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Have you ever had to choose between family and your own dignity? The stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. We believe in honoring our elders and treating all family members with love and respect. These stories are meant to inspire reflection on family relationships and the importance of compassion. Any resemblance to real people, events, or families is purely coincidental and unintentional. These narratives carry no specific cultural, political, or religious implications.